To
That makes
illustrate
sense.
it, to illustrate a little bit, Alexander, could you, in short, tell us what you think is going to happen in the near future regarding individual interests versus, let's say, collective interests, for lack of a better word? What would happen to most people who would not be, this individual artist, poet, creator? How are their lives going to change in the next several years versus the lives they've been living in modernity? And the lives they've been living before modernity. I can't even say that word.
Okay, so Nietzsche complained about the fact the vast majority of people have a slave morality, a slave mentality. So he hated the mass. But that's where most people are comfortable. The problem is they're comfortable with tribal. And if I was talking to polar bears, I would preach individualism because they're solitary animals who only fuck and breed and even eat their own children, and they're on their own their entire lives. So, but of course, you do that in Greenland. You'd be shamanic, wouldn't you? All of you, right? So, human beings are not. Human beings are literally tribal, and that's why I'm opposed to both individualism and I'm opposed to collectivism. And I think that dichotomy is wrong. It's just not human. The problem is one of scale. And ever since civilization started, the problem has been that tribal is the only thing we're comfortable with. Okay, if we go to any larger scale than that, we go towards eventually forms like nation and empire and things like that. All the larger forms we have to make an effort to fit into. And because we're not loyal to the larger scales, we also crime and all other kinds of things that we then go into, we get into those things. And then histories try to deal with this, and civilizations then either said that you have to operate within a certain state and you have to follow what the state dictates. And then you put one individual at the top, you call him a dictator, and everybody else has to follow him. Xi Jinping's China is a perfect example of that.
Well, we're gonna get into China with logo a little bit later. Just
Okay. But it works. It's not that it doesn't. It just won't work that long, but it will work for quite a while. So we have dictatorships and we have those systems. And then we have the smaller systems. And what I've argued all along is that the best two models I know for empire is Zoroastrianism and Persian Empire 2,200 years worked. And the US Constitution is built on the Persian Empire, if you didn't know that, with the splitting of power and all that, because that's why it's maintained over a long period of time. When it comes to nationhood, I think the Jews did that better than anybody else. The Jewish nation is really the only nation state that also managed to be a religion at the same time. So you can learn from Judaism and Zoroastrianism if you want to learn the forms of nation empire, and they're intertwined. They were co-created, by the way, which is interesting. We have not really succeeded in anything larger than tribe besides those two experiments ever. And everything else we've done is at best Confucianism in China. It lasts for about a generation, and then it implodes and falls apart anyway. So we end up with a false dichotomy of collective and individual. Now, what is happening right now is we're in the middle of a paradigm shift. Okay, at a paradigm shift, people with shamanoid personalities, that's about 4% of the population. About as many as the androgynous, which is another 4% of the population. Together, they constitute 8% of the population. All the fun people, all the rock stars and disco stars or whatever, are among those 8%. The other 92% of the human population are boring. They're called heterosexual men and women, okay? But the shamanoid characters are the only ones that are truly individual because they have to leave the tribe and they go out in the wilderness and the forest and live as hermits and weirdos or whatever. And you only basically bring them in every 7th year when everything else falls apart. And you bring them in for art, you bring them in for spirituality, you bring them in for the drugs, you bring them in for anything that is a slightly bit extraordinary in your life. You want to spice it up. And that's what they do. So they have to be individuals. But the problem is when the traditional sort of, the way you would run a larger scale society, when that falls apart, the shamanic trait becomes the idol. So after Hitler and Stalin made a mockery of a phallus, because they were fake phalluses in 1945, we started looking for the shamanic as new ideals. We started looking for rock stars and other people who killed themselves with the young as ideals for us as humanity. And that's why the shamanoid character suddenly was put on this pillar, like that was the ideal we should live accordingly. Well, we're probably a shamanoid majority in this discussion right now. We're not representative of the human population. Nietzsche would love us, but he would hate the rest out there or something like that. So the problem is this: what do the shamanoids do at this time is not so much that they're individual, they're just basically shamanoid, but they're the only ones who experiment enough for the paradigm shift to actually create the future prior to anybody else. And this is what we call exodology. So They're the ones who walk around, say in America today, say America's Egypt. They walk around in Egypt and they basically put crosses on the few doors of the people who are actually ready to go to the promised land the next day, like who are ready to go into the future, to really go into digital completely. And they mark those doors. And of course, it's a tiny minority, but it's the only thing we can do that could possibly happen, which is why I'm Nietzsche. That some people could get together, become the chosen ones, walk into the future, make an exodus out of contemporary society, and leave the masses behind them. And that's why it takes a sort of aristocratic ideal to pursue the exodology and do the exodus. And the people who do that will, to the majority extent, be shamanoid, but they will not be representative of everybody else. That's why I'm not a socialist.
I would love everybody.
I don't think, if I could interject, I mean, I don't see why being a shamanoid or whatever you called it requires you to be into like butt sex. Like, I don't see why you can't fuck chicks and be a shaman, to be honest. Like,
oh, they fuck everything. Okay, shamans fuck everything that moves as long as there's a breath. Yeah.
I think this is ridiculous. I mean,
already. I think it's more the openness to new experiences and that sort of thing.
Okay, I'm pretty open to experiences, but I got a pretty closed butthole, put it that way.
Yeah, well, then you're not really open to experiences.
We believe you. We believe.
Okay, you're the non-shaman among us, Joel. Clearly, butthole is just a butthole. Anything is an asset. Anything is material for shaman.
Well, we live in according to Deleuze, we live in a veritable field of anuses, which are penetrative of different experience. Never mind. I'm not gonna.
But I
that
think
was in. I forget which text where he said field of anuses. I think it was.
But I think what Paul was aiming for in the last discussion on Twitter was that I think Paul, you feel kind of a shame about what is going to happen with most people, with the masses. What is going to be their fate in this sense? But first, I want to make sure, does everybody agree with that? Like, Logo, do you agree with what Alexander Bard talked about right now regarding what's going to happen to most people and what's going to happen with these shamans, as he was phrasing it?
I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I can't really predict exactly what's going to happen or what contingencies may conspire. But it's certainly. I mean, you know, I certainly believe that this is what this man believes. Like, this is it's certainly a like mythology. Like the question really, you're saying like we. There's all these like large operative pronouns, but like that this is just like pure ideology. Like, we didn't decide anything. Like, you're talking ultimately about like oh, this embrace of the shamanoid, et cetera, et cetera. This is really just like a consequence of like the 20th century state, like creating like these sorts of culture war movements, as you're saying, right? We need these shamans, these Pied Pipers to bring the children into the digital wholly and entirely, as if like the true like shamanoid or outsider perspective would be like, wouldn't that be more skeptical of the digital world? Why would it be the digital optimist?
No. You're mixing up two things that have nothing to do with each other. Number one, I'm not optimist about digital law. I'm completely neutral historically. I'm just saying it's a new condition. So the paradigm shift means power shift somewhere else. And what you're seeing today with woke and everything is just exactly what happens with the paradigm shift. Woke today are all the fucking losers who are storming into the old institutions as they're dying. So they go into politics, they go into academics, they go to mass media, they go everywhere they can go into the institutions that nobody else wants to be in any longer because they're dying institutions. So in the dying institutions, that's where you find the Jacobins. They're the woke people are today. They're not winning. Napoleon won over the Jacobins eventually. The same thing will happen now. But what I'm saying here is that shamanoid people are the only people who peacefully communicate between tribes in any tribal world you look at. So you say you live in New Guinea like I have, and you look at the semi-nomadic people in New Guinea. Okay, the people who walk between tribes right in the middle of a war in the battlefield that nobody shoots at are the shamanoid people, because they're the only way you peacefully communicate between tribes. That's what shamanoid people do. Androgynous people are very different. They're the link between men and women. They're the link between matriarchy and patriarchy, between inner circuit and outer circuit within the tribe. That's what they're related, but they're totally different. So Joel doesn't have to worry. Shamans are mostly heterosexual, but they probably fuck anything that moves when they're on drugs. But they're not an ideal that I have. I don't have shamanoid people. That's not. I'm describing how these things work. And it's the same thing if you look at the printing press and how it revolutionized Europe in the 17th century. You had a bunch of people who ran off, used the new technologies, wildly experimented. And of course, they got ahead of everybody else. And finally, we get to the 19th century and mass education and large factories factories, that need manufacturing power. That's when you start to mass educate people and teach everybody to read and write and count and become good citizens in their nation states or whatever. But these things go through these periods. It's always the most experimental to jump onto new technology first, and that's why they gain from it first. But they could also obviously fail. But I'm not defending them, and the shamanoids are not going to lead the children of the future into the future. That's not how it works.
But do you think that
shamanoids? Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I think maybe to comment upon what Logo's point, do you think that in some ways digital communications and technology has really, shall we say, imploded the subject in the sense of a sort of fibrous being that we all are now, that our subjectivity is now extrapolated across an information network. And in that sense, a lot of those sort of experiences that were unique to a shamanoid personality, now it seems that a lot of people are trying to seek that same, what would you say, process of recognition throughout this simulated hyper-real environment that we all find ourselves in. And I think that the problem is that the vast majority of people, perhaps, they can't cope with a lot of this information and the sense of the self, qua self becoming just information. I think, like, to most people, we truly haven't contemplated what that means for the vast majority of people. But of course, the problems are, our values in society, which is really at the end of the day just like either utilitarianism or egalitarianism. They preach that everyone should have access to this because for reasons, right? Everyone should have these sort of experiences which bracket our own traditional sense of subjectivity. But that being said, it's like that's terrifying in a lot of ways. It's like we're monkeys playing with nuclear arms. Who knows? Nuclear.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But we're living right now in a supernova stage of the atomized self. The atomized self will not be the winner of digital at all. We haven't even understood digital yet. We're not doing it. Some people are spontaneously doing the right things, and we will observe that in hindsight. But most people are just doing all the wrong things. For example, influencers. Influencers are a perfect example of the sort of hyper-narcissism idiocy you would have at the end of a paradigm. And that's why it explodes. So they go online, and as soon as they start selling things they don't really believe in, any 18-year-old today calls them a whore. It's an influencer whore, and then they're dead. So that's not going to work. Actually, digital will kill advertising. We will in the future regard advertising as the ultimate mental rape of humanity. The abolition of advertising in the 2020s will look a lot like the abolition of slavery due to us 100 years later, because we will realize that we never asked for the ads to begin with. And when we got the algorithms and they finally started to work to our favor, ads is what we hated the most.
Where's this great anti-ad movement? Like, it sounds great. Where's it happening? Like, who's going to get this done?
It's called the spam box, and everybody does it every day. You throw it in the spam box. You hate advertising. We all do it. We're all part of it. We're just not aware of it.
Oh, you just mean that we have ad block, like some people have ad block.
Yes, ad blockers are a fantastic instrument for people
But advertising will still be illegal.
Rate, right?
It'll still be a legal industry, so that means that, like, when you're driving on the highways, you'll still see. I mean, you can look away from the billboards too, but are we getting rid of advertising?
Nobody looks at them any longer.
And perhaps
ads don't work. Ads don't work. That's why they're desperate.
All right, this is like the main thing that I disagree with you on.
That's why corporations spend more and more and more on advertising, because it doesn't work. And what is woke? Where does woke come from? It's a fucking desperate last attempt from the advertising and marketing industry to get to our eyes and our ears.
But we hate it. What we were. But
is it unsuccessful though? Like, I don't believe
it
that
is.
It is.
I've
totally successful.
I've worked in stuff that's related to like big data and that sort of stuff, and it is. Advertising is generally, it's one of those things where it's like you spend more and more, and you're not really sure what works, what doesn't work. There's some efficacy to it, but it's not really. It's very low. It's mostly just marketing hype.
Yeah, I mean, you have your pay to sell, right? You have your pay to sell.
Am I audible?
Go for it.
So I know statistically, like for Twitter, if you look, like the advertisements are like 0.01% successful, but Twitter advertisements are kind of shitty. I think, unfortunately, and I know it was like a meme term from like 2013, but native advertising I think is extremely successful. And that's like really does work. I mean, where you have people who, you know, will shill
Influencers.
like, products, and well, yeah, but it's even influencing. I think like it is influencing and influencers, but
yeah, but it's all underclass. Forgetting my point there. It's all underclass. Nobody in the upper class any longer accepts ads in any form whatsoever. And a Finnish study last year showed, you know, the YouTube ads, like you can get rid of them in a few seconds and you press skip the ad. Okay. A Finnish study showed last year that 992 times out of 1,000 people will press the button right away because they hate the ad. Now, if the advertising industry haven't understood yet that they're the fucking mental rapists of history and we will hate them in hindsight, you know, they're so stupid.
I agree with you, but it's not like advertising is going to go away. What's going to happen is it becomes more and more native.
For the underclass, because all of us who can't afford will pay to get rid of the shit.
I think
if you will not reach the people in power.
Wait. The most important thing in this is that it's all dependent on consumer spending. So like, advertising is part of like directing consumer spending. It's not like the success of advertising will be on the success of an expansion or a subtraction of individual consumer spending. I would say probably consumer spending, I mean, I don't know, it's probably just flatlining because we're forcing things in economically in a situation where, you know, there's, you know, people are just being pushed towards spending even while they're making less money because we need to maintain consumer spending to stimulate the economy.
But I think that
but that's nothing to do with advertising. That's everything to do today with algorithms. Okay, I start a restaurant, say here in central Stockholm where I live. All I need to do is to get 5 guests to the restaurant the first night when I open and give them an absolutely superb experience. And the next day I have 5.0 on Google Maps my restaurant and I have a queue outside. No advertising is involved in that process.
That's not how it works, though.
Communicated process today, you skip the advertising right away and you spend everything on the quality of what you do, because everything from now on will be about quality.
I think I agree with what you're saying. I just consider that that's just part of advertising.
Yeah, I agree. No. I agree. No. Well, Logo, if you want to make a point, then I'll.
Yeah. Well, that's not like how do you get those first 5 people in there, right? Like they'd be your friends or whatever. So you assume and like
advertising.
Well, then they'd be ostensibly right, like talking about it, word of mouth, posting about it as like influencers, like kind of.
That's not advertising. Form, that right? is That's authentic communication.
Okay. Well, okay, so then now we're just saying that we'll no longer have advertising.
Is something you spend money on.
Wait,
you have an advertising department.
Advertisers,
in your company,
I know.
Marketing department. You don't do marketing or advertising here.
Suddenly, all the corporations are going to be doing authentic communication with us. I think that's why they're all supporting Black Lives Matter. And
that is what I was.
No, that's nothing authentic about that at all. That's precisely my point. It's fake communication.
But they're friends.
Okay, hold on.
They're friends.
Gio,
they're all friends.
You wanted to say something before that?
I think
there was a mention of the blood on the houses during the Exodus. So what that reminds me of with the blood on the houses in Exodus are all the BLM signs and all the graffiti being done.
Crisis averted in Minnesota. They're going. Oof,
but in a way that
probably
is,
not. They're probably still gonna find.
But in a way that is the blood on the walls here, and that is driven out of fear. Mostly, I think. So the question is like, where do we go from here as far as that kind of advertising?
In the case of like the blood and that sort of thing, and advertising in general, I think the distinction I think that's not really being noticed is that I think Bard is referencing advertising in an exploitative sense. Not the natural advertising that comes from a genuinely good product, and that like word of mouth and communication, like you said, that's like, it's a natural advertising. It's not like synthetic, like forced. It's not basically a top down, like,
it's marketing.
It's marketing. No, but the thing is, so if I make something that's very quality, like a very quality product,
like I sell the sequence.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it is the sequence. Go and buy it is the sequence.
If I if 10 people buy it, they like it a lot.
I liked it a lot.
They advertise to other people. I don't think Bard doesn't consider that advertising, whereas you guys would consider that.
Nobody does.
I think that's the main.
Way. Yeah, that's the way.
Yeah. So I think
we're not going to have ads, but we'll solve marketing.
Yeah, well, I want to market Logo's book over here, ampersand.
Yeah,
I have the link to
I was
it.
grabbing
over
for
Let's
here.
market. Let's start advertising and marketing.
This is like
By the way,
ultimate
buy
American.
This
digital
is
libido.
extremely.
Just buy
This is
just
digital
pure
libido.
product placement.
I want
24/7.
everyone here to know this is authentic communication. We're not
Yeah,
advertising.
but what
or
I'm
shilling
saying is,
for
I think
ourselves.
that's like at the core of the disagreement is that you're seeing natural communication as
Okay,
marketing and advertising, and it's
Alexander.
It's both. It can be
Well,
both at the same time.
Does Alex think that there will no longer be money spent by corporations in order to direct people towards the products that they have or the services that they have in a way that they're not changing the development or aspects of the products, but rather just like you know what, like I know I'm just
Geo.
like is because that's what Google does. Like yes, it's algorithmic, but like also you can spend money on sponsored posts and it will push you higher up in the algorithm, right? Why is it
No. If Google would actually have the ads inside the algorithm, they would have ads. They would kill them. That's why exactly why you can create better and better algorithms.
Well,
you can beat Google at this game.
This
It's all
goes.
about
Well,
I just want to take a
algorithm
moment. I just
honest,
want to take
they
a.
make
I
it
just
up.
want to take a moment here to thank Mike Lindell and the my pillow.
Yeah.
They're fantastic support of break the rules.
The thing about Google.
The thing about ExpressVPN is that it's the best VPN service.
The thing about Google's ads too is not really advertising; it's really pay to play to get.
But the thing about advertising, if advertising is the biggest problem you have, like you're going pretty good, like life's pretty sweet. Like if there's a few brand names plastered on a wall somewhere, I don't really give a shit.
No, because
Joel, you're missing my point entirely. The problem is that no of the
Not
old
really.
power
I mean, I use
institutions-
ad blocker. I mean,
Listen, can I explain? None of the
Pretty
old
annoying,
power
I
institutions
guess.
can communicate any longer in any other way that isn't authentic. So that's exactly what woke capitalism will go down in flames. It's doomed to fail. Coinbase are so fucking smart. Brian Armstrong banned politics at Coinbase a year ago. That was so fucking prophetic. Every damn technologist I know today wants to work for Coinbase. Not because of crypto, because it's a workplace where politics is banned. Anybody who's involved in Black Lives Matter, they're going to regret it deeply because Black Lives Matter bitches are currently buying huge mansions in white neighborhoods in America. It will go down with huge hypocrisy, like Jacobins always have. Why would you get involved in Black Lives Matter?
Pretty sweet mansions, though, right?
Well, real quick, I just want to say we have $5 Canadian from Dream Radio. Sneed us your super chats right now. Sneed us your super chats. Anyway, Dream Radio says, if attention is more valuable than capital in the new world, then advertising attention is clearly the bottom of the barrel of attention quality. So,
well, no, but that's my point. I think maybe to cut in between why the stakes of this conversation, and Marcus, he did mention how I'm an alpha simp. The simp economy is a good example. I think the thing with advertisement, the reason we're talking about it, because when you look at the way in which our subjectivity, like I said, has been transformed by hyperreality, then you can see that advertisement as, say, the 1950s Madison Avenue model, that's going to go by the wayside. That's dead, right? But the advertisement comes about through this sort of systematic infiltration of identity from the corporatocracy itself. So it's not just that, I'm using Black Lives Matter, or in June is going to have the Pride thing and corporations are going to change their logo. It's deeper in the sense that now extreme brand identification goes beyond the products themselves towards the idea that is being marketed to you as consuming your identity. So this is why we're talking about it, because now when we've had this sort of run of the corporatocracy doing whatever it can, and there's virtually no government powerful to stop it, you really don't, the sort of discourses of power have transformed with it. So now people aren't just being marketed a product, they're being marketed a whole identity and lifestyle. And so this is obvious, right? But it becomes murky because yes, advertisement will die, but the death of advertisement, I truly feel, and this is where I disagree with Bart a little bit, I'm skeptical in that the future of advertisement itself, by using identity in such a way, that's going to unleash a hell of hells. I mean, it's already happening where you have you know, literal like Radlibs and Tankies supporting, like, I don't know, Oatly. Oatly's a good, that's what I wanted to talk about. Oatly is a perfect example by going after shit posters online, such as our friends. That is, to me, next level brilliant marketing. That's better than that bullshit they did where Oatly put the fucking ironic ads on the streets of Malmo and London and so forth. What they did by going after the top shit posters on the dissident right, that was amazing marketing right there. People that will strongly identify with sort of the progressive worldview, they're going to go out and drink the oat seed rape oil sludge because they fucking argued with Zero HP Lovecraft and Logo Daedalus online. So it's like,
did
to
Oatly
that's
at
brilliant.
me? I gotta look this up. Did this happen?
Was it you or I think they?
I don't think it
Hold
was
on,
me.
this
Yeah,
is
I
like
think it was
inside baseball stuff.
Yeah.
Who is Oatly? Just so we're all on the same
Oatly
page.
is this
Oatly's a
UK.
Swedish company. I know the guys. I'm drinking Oatly right here in my tea. So there you
Oh
go.
my god!
Because it actually tastes good.
Here it is, marketing, folks.
By the way, $1 from fighter flight. $1 fighter flight.
But I'll give you another example.
It's authentically good. I enjoy the
I'll
authentic
give you another
taste
example of
Oatly.
the problems the corporations are running into today. Okay, take
What's Oatly, by the way?
H&M
I don't
in
even know what it
China.
is.
We just got $100
Take
super
H&M in
chat from Oatly.
China. You know H&M, right? H&M. And H&M in China, and they decided they were too posh to use cotton from East Turkestan, or Xinjiang is called in China, because of the Uyghurs, right, who were forced to work in concentration camps. with the
Uyghurs?
cotton.
Oh boy.
Okay, so the Chinese decided to go after them. What the Chinese did was that they employed about 2 million youngsters in China and paid them to be bullies. And they had then started a campaign in Asia against H&M, in all of Asia, where they basically just put a poster in there with, Uyghurs picking cotton in East Turkestan. It looks wonderful and lovely, perfect picture, probably Xi Jinping at the corner or something. And then the other picture next to it is just one of H&M's own t-shirt factories in Bangladesh where everything looks horrible. And they're killing H&M. H&M are going to pull out of 20 countries dead because they decided to go woke, and now they're dead. Okay, you can't do woke capitalism. It will not work. And it will exactly, because it will go up against the fact that it's fundamentally fake. It's nothing to do with the product any longer, nothing to do with what you're doing. And it's trying to create a passion or a lifestyle or some kind of a sense. The advertisers are so desperate these days, they measure just the fact that we react at all. That's seen as a positive.
The thing
If
about
we
this
react
whole
negatively, it's also-
subject,
Can we
maybe
identify?
I'm a cynical asshole, but do most people really give a shit about any of this? Like, don't you just buy stuff because you want it?
Go and fuck yourself. Go and fuck yourself and get off. I mean, get offline. We're adding nothing
I
to this
advertise the stream so hard. I fucking
You're
own
the
screen
party
paintings.
pooper.
Oh my god.
You don't open your asshole. You're nothing intelligent to say. You just.
I think
Yeah,
Joel
there's no
needs
So I
room
gotta
for
tell you
goodness
stuff to
for
say,
that.
but this is just
Slide,
a
you know?
boring subject. Like the
Well,
whole, like, we've been talking about advertising.
Give us a
for
better
half an
one
hour.
then.
We'll
Well, I
move
think-
Give us a
on.
better
Let's-
topic then.
No, I think
Give us something constructive for God's
we
sake.
could tie it back to
Yeah.
the beginning with
No.
with
I actually
with
want
advertising.
someone
Joel
who's
to do
more
this.
cynical
With-
than
with-
I
with
want Joel
advertising-
to do this just like they have, just like the comedians invite the hecklers on stage and say, "Now you do stand up, Joel. Next subject, your choice."
Alright.
I mean, around the realm.
Well,
of
what is okay? So Lev,
Yeah.
you had
No, fuck me.
You always have
Fuck
a plan.
me. Don't worry about me.
Individualism
No, let's
versus.
give Joel. No, let's
Yeah,
give
Joel.
Joel. A
Yeah.
fucking,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
You bring us the subject.
Yeah,
I don't give a
subscribe.
shit about anything.
Okay.
No, we want pornography. Give us pornography. Here you go.